A lowly slave girl becomes a noble lady. She's been given all the honors, and all the clothes, and all the food. The former master's family came to her door in a fierce manner. In a flash, scenes of past humiliation flooded into her mind. The young lady is determined to take revenge and will eat her alive. Taylor hurriedly pulls Simon to run away, and Missy looks at her head, and Missy looked at the figure on her head frowned. She looked at her head and frowned. Something looked familiar to her. Taylor has no choice but to confess her life. Simon is surprised to hear her secret, but Simon insists on consummating the marriage because he has an even more difficult secret in his heart. In fact, he is a sexual minority who can't hold a woman in his arms. In this day and age, this kind of status is a big taboo, if it's known by others. I'm afraid it'll be hard to escape the meaning, but when two people with big secrets get married, they can support each other and protect each other. So Taylor accepted the marriage with open arms. The two of them, who looked so together in front of others that day, got married smoothly. The marriage was a smooth one. Sean, who'd not yet left town, and his servant, who had already changed his name to Wilson, were in the crowd, seeing Taylor in her red wedding gown. She was bitter at the thought of having nothing to do with her life, and she wanted to see which groom it was. She wanted to see which of the groomsmen was so lucky. But when she saw Simon's face, Simon and Sean were shocked. How in the world could there be such a resemblance? Is there something going on between them? More importantly, how did Taylor choose a face Sean's face? Is he trying to get Sean? Thinking about it, Sean's steps are starting to get heavy. He said he'd leave as soon as Taylor's wedding was finalized. Well, it looks like that's not gonna happen. The servants followed the Seton all the way to the magistrate's office. The magistrate was very pleased with his excellent daughter-in-law. A study was prepared for him, and a lawyer's office was set up in front of the magistrate's office. All these details speak of this love for Taylor. From Oak House, the servants who accompanied them lamented that the magistrate had even given them such a position. The magistrate even gave them new clothes. Even the sheriff has new clothes for lowly men like them. I guess that's what love is all about, as a token of appreciation. They made a special warm wine. It's said that after drinking it, the grocer in the dry goods store, they gave birth to 6 children. On their wedding night, they drank for a while. Simon had no intention of turning out the lights and going to bed. He asked Taylor to keep it a secret. He said he had some important business to attend to. He wouldn't be home for days. Simon's been training a team in the back room. He goes through a rigorous midnight training program every day. He's planning an operation with his slave girl Hagen. At 3 o'clock, Simon changed into his nightshirt in his bedroom. A heart was branded on his shoulder, and in the center of the room, a large heart. Chi-Jin-chi's family is also bitter about the magistrate's regret of the marriage, and the chairman of the village hall realizes that he is not on the same side as the magistrate. The chairman of the village hall realizes that he and the magistrate are not on the same side. They begin to plan their revenge. Early next morning, the court's press office visited the town. The next morning, the court's press office visited the village hall. In the Mingtav, I'd like to pass on a good suggestion to the military general. He said that he found a lot of gold roadheads in the mountains. He wanted the village hall to help him dig for gold. As a reward, the men who found the gold will only take a small portion. The rest belongs to the general. But if the court finds out that you're hiding the yellow turban, Rod, it's a big offense. Moreover, General had blamed the former governor for the bribe. He was relegated to the city's fillings. General and the gold digging together. It's impossible. Mrs. General was adamant. A gold roadstead is such a precious treasure. Chi-Jin-chi and his wife volunteered. Chi-Jin-chi and his wife volunteer in the gold digging, provided that all the proceeds are shared half and half. And Miss Chi has another condition attached to it. She was humiliated by the last withdrawal ceremony, and they wanted to be married to the generals. They were to become in-laws with the generals. Jesse was to marry General's son David. Chi-clan is a wealthy man. Chi-clan promised to help in any way, shape or form. Chi-clan promised to help in any way he could. Of course, the greediest general couldn't resist the temptation. After Taylor became a lawyer, Taylor became a solicitor and solved many cases for people who had been silenced by the nobility. Brother Simon cherished his sister-in-law. Occasionally, he would bring him flowers to encourage him. At his age, he was a high school scholar with a promising career ahead of him. But his recent archery exams have caused him a lot of trouble. As it happened, Taylor had never forgotten to improve herself since she became a young lady. Taylor has never forgotten to herself. Of course, archery is no big deal. The magistrate happened to catch her teaching her brother, a daughter-in-law with such motivation, responsibility, and talent. The magistrate was more than pleased. In the middle of the night, some of the servants escaped over the wall. but they were caught in the act. The young slave Min pleaded to go back and visit her sick father. But, of course, that was not to be. They were ordered to be shackled and put in the warehouse. Taylor was on the street, rescuing a counter who'd been expelled by the pearl merchants. They were forging documents. They tricked an illiterate citizen into making a pledge. They illegally sold the people's families into slavery. This old father's daughter. This is May, who tried to escape last night in order to cover their tracks. Taylor switched identities with the retainer, and while the vendors were presenting goods from another country, he snuck through the marketplace. He found a warehouse in the far quarter guarded by 2 guards, and a heavy chain on the door. The guards caught a glimpse of a sneaky Taylor. They're about to question him. General arrived to inspect the goods. Taylor expected her life. Inside that locked warehouse, a number of illegally kidnapped slaves were being held there. They've been without food for days, and they're screaming. Most of them are descendants of the nobles who sacrificed themselves in the pleasure houses. There are also sexual minorities been driven out of their homes by the nobles. In short, everyone is not accepted by the world. No one cares even if they suffer. But the general needs so many servants. What is he up to? Taylor and the houseagist went home, witnessed Simon making his way into the county's pleasure houses. Realizing that something was amiss, Taylor reminded the servant not to spread the word. Simon changed into his night clothes and sneaked into the Pearl Company, while the security guards were changing their posts. He was trying to save one of the children. He wants to save one of the children, and says he will save him from his misery as soon as possible. The magistrate received a message that night. Anonymous alerted him. The pearl merchants have been following the magistrate. Considering the many cases of human trafficking into slavery, they should be planning to take advantage of the magistrate's departure from the city. They're going to take advantage of the opportunity to trade slaves. So the magistrate released a fake news. He's going out on patrol from tomorrow. He'll send his trusted men to monitor the merchants. He'll be sure to catch the buyer behind the deal. When Taylor returned to the magistrate's office, Simon was already changing in his room. He could clearly see Simon was branded with a heart, but he wouldn't talk, and Taylor wouldn't press him. And when he took the bow and arrow from the hallway, Taylor knew who used the arrows to send a message. The people of the Pearl Merchant Group were really fooled when they received the false news that the magistrate had left home. They transported the servants to the place agreed with the buyer. The officials and soldiers surrounded the merchant group. The security chief refused to tell who the buyer was and where the servants were to be sent. A fierce fight broke out with the 2 sides. A masked man came down from the sky to save the day. During the fight, he was injured. The mask fell off. Taylor got a good look. It's really him, Simon. The pearl merchant feeded and then fled with a few servants. Simon picked up the boy he was trying to save and left without saying a word. When questioned by the magistrate, Taylor lied that he didn't see the masked man's face. The Pearl Merchant Group handed over all their servants to General. After being disrupted by the magistrate, General's aid for him grows. General's hatred for him grows deeper and deeper. Taylor questioned the rescued servants. None of them knew where they were going. And Simon wasn't going to hide it anymore. He sent his confident Hagen to pick her up and take her to a pleasure house. There's a love pavilion in the pleasure house. Behind a screen in the innermost room, there's a secret door that no one knows about. If you go through it, you'll find the courtyard hidden in the woods. Simon is the master of the court of love. The character for heart is the mark of a member. The servants here, they are all like Simon. Sexual minorities who not accepted by the world. They are teased or tortured. They live in the darkest place where they can see the sun. They live in the darkest of places. The loving court exists to help them. Training in martial arts is just a way for them to protect themselves. All men are born equal. Like Taylor, who was to make sure his servants were treated fairly. Simon had ambitions. Simon was ambitious. To create a world where differences are accepted. General's son, David, is at a club with his friends. He's a big, fat son of an aristocrat. Hagen, who is a pretty girt him, but he realizes that he is a man. The humiliation is not enough. David took advantage of his father's power. David, in his sauce power, wants to drag Hagen to the village hall for execution. Taylor couldn't help but stop it. She used her tongue to turn the situation around. Hagen was sent to the village hall to be punished. Hagen was the first child Simon ever saved, and the key to a new world he was determined to open. The sexual minority has never made a big mistake. They live in hiding just because they wanted to live in peace. But the eyes of the world are as sharp as bloodless knives. They were different from the rest of the world. If they are labeled as monsters, they can be easily erased. It's easy to erase them. Even the county magistrate can only comply with the people's wishes. The maximum penalty is death. Sheathe your sword. Savanted held his breath. The door to the magistrate's office opened, bringing in the infinite sunshine, and a dignified lawyer, Taylor, who said Hagen wasn't a monster. He said that Hagen was nonster, but a human being, an innocent victim of harassment. No matter who they are, no matter who they are, everyone deserves a fair trial before the law. If there is no law about sexual minorities, then there is no law that can sentence them to death. And even if there is no such law, there is a precedent judgment. On August 12, the Kinord sent two minority to be sent to a remote place. He sent him to a remote place to live alone. Even the king wouldn't allow him to use the criminal law to execute a man given by the Gauls. How dare anyone else? The magistrate changed his mind and set a date for the trial. In the meantime, Hagen is still free to move about in the court of love, until the court gives the order. There will be no more changes in the case. Taylor's reputation in the city has grown. The servants saw him as their savior. While wandering in the marketplace, Taylor saw a poor girl asking for medicine on credit, but she was turned away. He not only bought her medicine, but also helped him to fill his stomach. The girl, she learns, is rescued from a Minnesota trading company. During her transportation that night, she heard the merchant say that halfway through the journey, they'd turn back to mountains close by, and the closest mountain to the city was Cloud Peak. General had the pearl merchants buy up slaves in order to mine the Go Yunfin Mountain. Seeing that the treasure was about to be in his pocket, the security guards secretly brought another bad news. The securities have secretly brought another piece of bad news. Starting tomorrow, the county magistrate will investigate every corner of Yunfeng Mountain. The underfed servant muttered, "Should have run away with the other slaves. I should have run away with the other slaves. We could have eaten and learned Kung Fu." General immediately realized something was wrong. Teaching Kung Fu is not treason. If not, then he must be now. The magistrate who was about to search Yunfeng Mountain received an urgent report. The imperial envoys are on their way. The general. Together with the general. They turned the place upside down. Finally, in the deepest room, they found a secret door behind the screen. Simon, who'd been tipped off, evacuated the place. The servants here will destroy the evidence. They're going to destroy the evidence. They're going to jump into the corridor. People flashed by. And in the heat of the moment, Hagen urged Simon to leave. Hagen urges Simon to leave. He's accused of being a silent traitor. The original plan to search the mountain was postponed. Now it's all about hunting down the remaining traitors. The magistrate had to block all intersections in the town. They're sectioning the streets for anyone with a heart mark on them. Those who resisted would be executed on the spot. A father really knows his son best. Although the magistrate didn't see the masked men when they broke out of the Pearl Merchant group, the magistrate didn't get a good look at the masked man, but he had an answer in his heart. Simon did not want to hide a thing anymore. He disregarded Talier's obstruction. He showed the heart mark on his shoulder, carrying a secret that is not accepted by people. It should be buried deep in his heart. But Simon is too stubborn. He vowed to keep the mark and protect the innocent people of Love Heart's court. The magistrate had to break off the relationship with Simon and end the father-son relationship. He forced him to leave town and never be seen again. Although his words were harsh, the tears in his eyes were almost bursting. He just wants to give his son a chance to live. The town was surrounded. Officials and soldiers soon caught up with the two, who fled in the middle of the night. They chased them all the way to a mansion. Taylor pushed Simon into the main room and left him behind to deal with the endless soldiers. Unfortunately, he was too late to do so. The soldiers soon dragged out a man from the main room. His clothes and attire remained unchanged. The only thing missing was the heart mark on his shoulder. Looking at the other side of the mouth, Taylor realizes that the man is Sean. After the officers leave, Simon walks out of the room wearing Sean's clothes. Sean waved for them to leave. Taylor stared back for a long time until he was completely out of the house. Sean took off his disguise and tugged at the corners of his mouth. The roads are blocked. The only way out of town is by water. He promised to return when he could. But he doesn't know when again. The town is harboring a traitor. As a magistrate, the man is guilty of dereliction of duty. Before kneeling down to receive the decree, he reminded Taylor to leave the house. The magistrate was stripped of his office and confiscated his property and family. He praised the military general, who had suppressed the rest. He took off his hat and put it on the ground. He fainted and fell to the ground. This time the winner can't hide his smirk of triumph.